was supposed to be charged with laudanum, a strange apostolic whim having seized him. He had left the Nescuna for Nantucket, where, with that cunning, peculiar craziness, he assumed a steady, common-sense exterior and offered himself as a green-handed candidate for the Jeroboam's whaling voyage. They engaged him, but straightway, upon the ship's getting out of sight of land, his insanity broke out in freshet. He announced himself as the Archangel Gabriel and commanded to the captain to jump overboard. He published his manifesto, whereby he set himself forth as the deliverer of the isles of the sea and the vicar general of all Oceanica. The unflinching earnestness with which he declared these things, the dark, daring play of his sleepless, excited imagination, and all the preternatural terrors of real delirium, united to invest this Gabriel in the minds of the majority of the ignorant crew with an atmosphere of sacredness. Moreover, they were afraid of him. As such a man, however, was not of much practical use in the ship, especially as he refused to work except when he pleased. The incredulous captain would fain have been rid of him. But apprised that the individual's intention was land to him in the first convenient port, the Archangel forthwith opened with all the seals and vials, devoting the ship and all hands to unconditional perdition in case the intention was carried out. So strongly did he work upon his disciples among the crew that at last in a body they went to the captain and told him if Gabriel was sent from the ship, not a man of them would remain. He was therefore forced to relinquish his plan, nor would they permit Gabriel to be any way maltreated, say or do what he would. So that it came to pass that Gabriel had the complete freedom of the ship. The consequence of all that was that the Archangel cared little or nothing for the captain and the mates. And since the epidemic had broken out, he carried a higher hand than ever, declaring that the plague, as he called it, was at his sole command, nor should it be stayed but according to his good pleasure. The sailors, mostly poor devils, cringed, and some of them fawned him in obedience to his instructions, sometimes rendering him personal homage as to a god. Such things may seem incredible, but however wondrous they are true. Nor is the history of the fanatics half so striking in respect to the measureless self-deception of the fanatic himself, as his measures power of deceiving and bedeviling so many others. But it is time to return to the Pequod. I fear not thy epidemic, man, said Ahab from the bulwarks to the Captain Mayhew, who stood in the boat stern. Come on board. But now Gabriel started to his feet. Think of the fevers, yellow and bilious. Beware of the horrible plague. Gabriel, Gabriel, cried Captain Mayhew, thou must either. But that instant a headlong wave shot the boat far ahead, and its seethings drowned all speech. Hast thou seen the white whale? Demanded Ahab, when the boat drifted back. Think of thy whaleboat, stove and sunk. Beware of the horrible tale. I tell thee again, Gabriel, that. But again the boat tore ahead as if dragged by fiends. Nothing was said for moments while a succession of riotous waves rolled by, which by one of those occasional caprices of the seas were tumbling, not heaving it. Meantime, the hoisted sperm whale's head jogged about very violently, and Gabriel was eyeing it with rather more apprehensiveness than his archangel nature seemed to warrant. When this interlude was over, Captain Mayhew began a dark story concerning Moby-Dick, not, however, without frequent interruptions from Gabriel whenever his name was mentioned, and the crazy sea that seemed to league with him. It seemed that the Jeroboam had not long left home, when, upon speaking a whale ship, her people were reliably apprised of the existence of Moby-Dick. and the havoc he had made. Greedily sucking in his intelligence, Gabriel solemnly warned the captain against attacking the white whale, in case the monster should be seen, and his gibbering insanity, pronouncing the white whale to be less than the Shaker God incarnated, the Shakers receiving the Bible. But when, some year or two afterwards, Moby-Dick was fairly sighted from the mastheads, Macy, the chief mate, burned with ardor to encounter him. And the captain himself being not unwilling to let him have the opportunity, despite the archangel's denunciations and forewarnings. Macy succeeded in persuading five men to his boat. With them he pushed off, and after as much weary pulling and many perilous unsuccessful onsets, he at least succeeded in getting the iron fast. Meantime, Gabriel, ascending to the main royal masthead, was tossing one arm in fanatic gestures and hurling forth prophecies of speedy doom to the sacrilegious assailants of his divinity. Now, while Macy, the mate, was standing up in his boat's bow, with all the reckless energy of the tribe, venting his wild exclamations upon the whale and essaying to get a fair chance at his poised lance, lo! A broad white shadow rose from the sea by its quick fanning motion, temporarily taking the breath out of the bodies of the oarsmen. Next instant, the luckless mate, so full of furious life, was smitten bodily into the air, and making a long arc of his descent, fell into the sea at the distance of about 50 yards. Not a chip of the boat was harmed, nor a hair on any oarsman's head, but the mate forever sank. It is well to parenthesize here that of the fatal accidents in the sperm whale fishery, this kind is perhaps almost as frequent as any. Sometimes nothing is injured but the man who is thus annihilated. Oftener the boat's bow is knocked off, or the thigh board in which the headsman stands is torn from its place and accompanies the body. But strangest of all is the circumstance that is more instance than one. When the body has been recovered, not a single mark of violence is discernible, the man being stark dead. The whole calamity with the falling of form of Macy was plainly described from the ship. Raising a piercing shriek, the vile, Gabriel called off the terror-stricken crew from further hunting the whale. This terrible event clothed the archangel with added influence because his credulous disciples believed that he had specifically foreannounced it, instead of only making a general prophecy, which anyone might have done, and so have chanced to hit one of many markings on the wide margin allowed. He became a nameless terror to the ship. Many who, having concluded his narration, Ahab put such questions to him that the stranger captain could not forbear inquiring whether it intended to hunt the white whale if opportunity should offer. To which Ahab answered, "Aye." Straightway then Gabriel once more started to his feet, glaring upon the old man, and would vehemently exclaim with downward pointing fingers, think of the blasphemer, dead and down there. Beware of the blasphemer's end. Ahab stolidly turned aside, and then said to Macy, "Captain, I have just bethought me of my letter bag. There is a letter for one of thy officers, if I mistake not. Starbuck, look over the bag." Every whale ship takes out a goodly number of letters for various ships, whose delivery to the persons to whom they may be addressed depends upon the mere chance of encountering them in the four oceans. Thus, most letters never reach their mark, and many are only received after attaining an age or 2 or 3 years or more. Soon Starbuck returned with the letter in his hand. It was solely stubbled, damp, and covered with a dull spotted green mold, in consequence of being kept in a dark locker of a cabin. Of such a letter, Death himself might well have been the post boy. "Canst not read it?" cried Ahab. "Give it to me, man. It's but a dim scrawl. What is this?" As he was setting it out, Starbuck took a long cutting spade pole and with his knife slightly split the end to insert the letter there, and in that way hand it to the boat without its coming any closer to the ship. Meanwhile, Ahab, holding the letter, muttered, yes, Mr. Harry. A woman's penny hand, a man's wife, I'll wager. Mr. Harry Macy's ship, Jeroboam. Why, it's Macy, and he's dead. Poor fellow, and from his wife's side, Mayhew. But let me have it. Nay, keep it thyself, cried Gabriel to Ahab. Thou art soon going that way. Curses throttle thee, yelled Ahab. Captain Mayhew, stand by now to receive it. And taking the fatal missive from Starbuck's hands, he caught it in the slit of the pole, and he reached it over towards the boat. But as he did so, the oarsman expectantly desisted from rowing. The boat drifted a little towards the ship's stern, so that if the letter suddenly ranged along with Gabriel's eager hand. He clutched it in an instant, seized the boat knife, and impaling the letter on it, sent it thus loaded back into the ship. It fell at Ahab's feet. Then Gabriel shrieked out to his comrades to give way with their oars, and in that manner of the mutinous boat rapidly shot away from the Pequod. As after this interlude, the seamen resumed their work upon the jacket of the whale, many strange things were hinted in references to this wild affair.
The monkey road. In the tumultuous business of cutting in and attending to a whale, there is much running backwards and forwards among the crew. Now hands are wanted here, then again hands are wanted there. There's no staying in any one place, for at one and the same time, everything has to be done everywhere. It's much the same with him who endeavors the description of the scene. We must now retrace our way a little. It was mentioned that upon first breaking ground in the whale's back, the blubber hook was inserted into the original hole there cut by the spades of the mates. But how did so clumsy and weighty a mass as that same hook get fixed in that hole? It was inserted there by my particular friend Queequeg, whose duty it was as a harpooner to descend upon the monster's back for the special purpose referred to. But in very many cases, circumstances require that the harpooner shall remain on the whale till the whole flensing or stripping operation is concluded. The whale, be it observed, lies almost entirely submerged, except in the immediate parts operated upon. So down there, some 10 feet below the level of the deck, the poor harpooner flounders about, half on the whale and half in the water, as the vast mass revolves like a treadmill beneath him. On the occasion in question, Queequeg figured in the Highland costume, a shirt and socks, in which, to my eyes at least, he appeared to uncommonly advantage, and no one had a better chance to observe him, as will be presently seen. Being a savage bowsman, that is, the person who pulled the bow oar in his boat, second one from forward, it was my cheerful duty to attend on him while taking that scramble upon the dead wheel's back. You've seen Italian organ boys holding a dancing ape by a long cord. Just so, from this ship's steep side, did I pull Queequeg down there in the sea, by what's technically called in the fishery, a monkey rope, attached to a strong strip of canvas belted around his waist. It was a humorously perilous business for both of us. For before we proceed further, it must be said that the monkey rope was fast at both ends, fast to Queequeg's broad canvas belt, and fast to my narrow one. So that for better or for worse, we two for the time were wedded, and should poor Queequeg seek to rise no more, that old usage and honor demanded that instead of cutting the cord, it should drag him down in his wake. So then an elongated Siamese ligature united us. Queequeg was my own inseparable twin brother, nor could I anyway get rid of the dangerous liabilities which the hempen bond entailed. So strongly and metaphysically did I conceive of my situation then, that while earnestly watching his motions, I seemed distinctly to perceive that my own individuality was now merged in a joint stout company of two, that my free will had received a mortal wound, and that another's mistake or misfortune might plunge innocent me into the unmerited disaster and death. Therefore I saw that here was a sort of interrivaling providence, for its even-handed equity never could have sanctioned so gross an injustice. And yet, still further pondering, while I jerked him now and then from being between the whale and the ship, which would threaten to jam him. Still further pondering, I say, I saw that this situation of mine was a precise situation of every mortal that reads. Only in most cases, he, one way or another, has this Siamese connection with a plurality of other forms. If your banker breaks, you snap. If you're apothecary by mistake, sends you poison in your pills, you die. True, you may say that by exceeding caution, you may possibly escape these and the multitudinous other evil chances of life. But handle Queequeg's monkey rope equally as I would. Sometimes he jerked it so I came very near sliding overboard. Or could I possibly forget that, do what I would, I only had the management from one end of it. I hinted that I would often jerk poor Queequeg from between the whale and the ship, where he would occasionally fall, the incessant rolling and swaying of both. But this was not the only jamming jeopardy he was exposed to. Unappalled by the massacre made upon them during the night, the sharks now rushing more keenly allured by the before-pent blood which began to flow from the carcass. The rabid creatures swarmed around it like bees in a beehive. And right in among those sharks was Queequeg, who often pushed them aside with his floundering feet. A thing altogether incredible were it not that, attracted by such prey as a dead whale, the otherwise miscellaneously carnivorous shark will seldom touch man. Nevertheless, it may well be believed that since they have such a ravenous finger in the pie, it's deemed but wise to look sharp to them. Accordingly, besides the monkey rope, which had now then jerked the fellow from too close a vicinity to the maw of what seemed a peculiarly ferocious shark, he was provided with still another protection. Suspended over the side in one of the stages, Chastito and Ragu continually flourished over his head a couple of keen whale spades, wherewith they slaughtered as many sharks as they could reach. This procedure of theirs, to be sure, was very disinterested and benevolent to them. They meant Queequeg's best happiness, I admit, but in their hasty zeal to befriend him, and from the circumstances that both he and the sharks were at times half hidden by the blood-budded waters, those indiscreet spades of theirs would come nearer amputating a leg than a tail. But poor Queequeg, I suppose, straining and gasping there with that great iron hook, poor Queequeg, I suppose, only prayed to his Yojo, and gave up his life into the hands of his gunners. Well, my dear comrade and twin brother, thought I, as I drew in and then slapped off the rope to every swell of the sea. What matters it, after all? Are you not the precious image of each and all of us men in this whaling world? That unsounded ocean you gasp in is life. Those sharks your foes, those spades your friends. And what between sharks and spades you are a sad pickle in peril, poor lad. But courage, there's good cheer in store for you, Queequeg. For now, as his blue lips and bloodshot eyes, the exhausted savage at last climbs up the chain and stands all drifting and involuntarily trembling over the side. The steward advances, and with a benevolent consolatory glance hands him, what, some hot crown there? No, hands him, you got it, hugs him a cup of tepid ginger and water. Ginger? Do I smell ginger? Suspiciously asked Silk, coming near. Yes, this must be ginger. Peering into the as yet untasted cup. Then, standing as if incredulous for a while, he calmly walked toward the astonished stewards, slowly saying, Ginger? Ginger? And will you have the goodness to tell me, Mr. Doughboy, where lies the virtue of ginger? Ginger? Is ginger the sort of fuel you use, Doughboy, to kindle a fire in this shivering camel? Ginger? What the devil is ginger? Sea coal, firewood, lucifer matches, tinder, gunpowder? What the devil is ginger? I say you offer this cup to our poor Queequeg there. There's some sneaky temperance society movement about this business, he suddenly added, now approaching Starbuck, who had just come forward. Will you look at that pan again, sir? Smell of it, if you please. Then watching the mate's countenance, he added, the steward, Mr. Starbuck, had the face to offer that chamomile and jalap to Queequeg. There, insisted on the whale. The steward and apothecary, sir, and may I ask whether this is sort of bitters by which he blows back the life to a half-drowned man? Trust not, said Starbuck. It's poor stuff enough. Aye, steward, said cried Stubb. Who teach you to drag a harpooner? None of your apothecary's medicine here. You want to poison us, do ye? You got your insurances out on our lives and want to murder us all with patent proceeds, do ye? It wasn't me, cried Doughboy. It was Aunt Charity that brought the ginger on board and made me never to give the harpooneers any spirits, only this ginger jug. So she called it Ginger Jug. You gingerly rascal, take that and run along with you to the lockers and get something back. Oh, but you're no wrong, Mr. Starbuck. It's the captain's orders. Go out for the harpooner on a whale. Enough, replied Starbuck. Don't hit him again. But, oh, I never hurt when I hit, except when I hit a whale or something of that sort, and this fellow's a weasel. What were you about saying, sir? Only this, go down with him and get what I want to thyself. When Stubb reappeared, he came with a dark flask in one hand and a sort of tea caddy in the other. The first contained the strong spirits and was handed to Queequeg, and the second was Aunt Charity's gift, and that was freely given to the waves.
Stubb and Flask kill a right whale and then have a talk over him. It must have been borne in mind that all of this time we have a sperm whale's prodigious head hanging to the Pequod's side. But we must let it continue to hang there. We must continue to let it hang there a while till we can get a chance to attend to it. For the present, other matters press, and the best we can do now for the head is to pray heaven the tackles may hold. Now, during the past night and forenoon, the Pequod had gradually drifted into the sea, which by its occasional patches of yellow grit gave unusual tokens of the vicinity of right whales, a species of the Leviathan that but few supposed to be at this particular time lurking anywhere near. And though all hands commonly disdained the capture of those inferior creatures, and though the Pequod was not commissioned to cruise for them at all, and though she had passed numbers of them near the Crozettes without lowering a boat, yet know that the sperm whale had been brought alongside and beheaded. To the surprise of all, the announcement was made that a right whale should be captured that day if opportunity offered. Nor was this long wanting. Tall spouts were seen to the leeward, and two boats, Stubbs and Flask, were detached in pursuit. Pulling further and further away, they at last became almost invisible as the men at the masthead. But suddenly, in the distance, they saw a great heap of tumultuous white water, and soon after the news came from aloft that one or both of the boats must be basked. An interval passed, and the boats were in plain sight, in the act of being dragged right towards the ship by the towing whale. So close did the monster come to the hull that at first it seemed as if he meant it malice. But suddenly going down in the maelstrom, with 3 rods of the planks, and wholly disappeared from view, as if diving under the keel. Cut! Cut! Was the cry from the ship of the ship to the boats, which for one instant seemed on the point of being brought with a deadly dash against the vessel's side. But having plenty of line yet in the tubs, and the whale not sounding very rapidly, they paid out abundance of rope, and at the same time pulled with all their might as to get ahead of the ship. For a few minutes the struggle was intensely critical, for while they still slacked out the tightened line in one direction and still plied their oars in another, the contending strain threatened to take them under. But it was only a few feet in advance they sought to gain, and they stuck to it till they did gain it, when instantly a swift tremor was felt running like lightning along the keel, and the strained line scraping beneath the ship suddenly rose to view under her bows, snapping and quivering, and so flinging off its drippings that the drops fell like bits of broken glass on the water, while the whale beyond also rose to sight, and once more the boats were free to fly. But the fagged whale abated his speed, and blindly altering his course, went around the stern to the ship, towing the 2 boats after him, so that they performed a complete circuit. Meantime, they hauled more and more upon their lines, till close flanking him on both sides, Stubb answered Flask with lance for him. Stubb answered Flask with lance for lance, and thus round and round the Pequod the battle went, while the multitudes of sharks that had before swum around the sperm whale's body rushed to the fresh blood that was spilled, thirstily drinking at every new gash, as the eager Israelites did at the new bursting fountains that poured from the smitten rock. At last his spout grew thick, and with a frightful roll and vomit, he turned upon his back a corpse. While the two headsmen were engaged in making fast cords to his flukes, and in other ways getting the mast readiness for towing, some conversation ensued between them. "I wonder what the old man wants with this lump of foul lard," said Stubb, not without some disgust at the thought of having to do with so ignoble a leviathan. "Wants with it," said Flask, coiling some spare line in the boat's bow. "Did you never hear that the ship was but once has a sperm whale's head hoisted on her starboard side, and at the same time a right whale's on the larboard? Did you never hear, Stubb, that ship can never afterwards capsize?" "Why not?" "I don't know, but I heard that Gambage, ghost of the Fedallah, saying so, and he seems to know all about the ship's charms. But I sometimes think that he'll charm the ship to no good at last. I don't half like that chap. Did you ever notice how the trusk of his sort of carved into the snake's head stuff? Sink him. I never look at him at all. But if I ever get a chance to in a dark night, and he's standing hard by the bulwarks, and no one by, look down there, Flask," pointing into the sea with a peculiar motion of both hands. "Aye, will I. Flask, I'll take that Fedallah to be the devil in disguise. Do you believe that cock and bull story about that having being stowed away on board ship? He's the devil, I say. The reason you don't see his tail is because he tucks it up and out of sight. He carries it coiled away in his pocket, I guess. Blast him. Now that I think of it, he's always wanting oakum to stuff into the toes of his boots. He sleeps in his boots, don't he? He hasn't got any hammock, but I've seen him lay off nights in a coil of rigging. No doubt, and it's because of his cursed tail. He coils it down. Do you see it in the eye of the rigging? What's the old man have so much to do with him for? Striking up a swap or bargain, I suppose. Bargain about what? What do you see the old man is hard bent after that white whale? And the devil there is trying to come out around him and get him to swap away his silver watch and his soul or something of that sort, and then he'll surrender Moby-Dick. Pooh, Stubb, are you skylarking? How can Fedallah do that? I don't know, Flask, but the devil is a curious chap and a wicked one, I tell ye. When they say how he went to sauntering into the old flagship once, switching his tail about devilish, easy, and gentlemanlike, and inquiring if the old governor was at home. Well, he was at home, and asked the devil what he wanted. The devil switching his hoops up and says, I want John. What for, says the old governor. What business is that of yours, says the devil, getting mad. I want to use him. Take him, says the governor. And by the Lord, Flask, if the devil didn't give John the Asiatic cholera before he got through with him, I'll eat this whale in one mouthful. But look sharp, ain't you ready there? Well, then, pull ahead and let's get the whale alongside. I think I remember some such story as you were telling, said Flask. When at last the two boats were slowly advancing with their burden towards the ship, but I can't remember where. 3 Spaniards, adventures of those 3 bloody-minded soldados. Did you read it there, Flask? I guess you did. No, never. Never saw such a book. Heard of it, though. But now tell me, Stubb, do you suppose that the devil was speaking of you just now and was the same you say is now on board the Pequod? Am I the same man that helped kill this whale? Doesn't the devil live forever? Whoever heard that the devil is dead? Did you ever see any person wearing mourning for the devil? And if the devil has a latch key to get in the admiral's cabin, don't you suppose he'd crawl into the porthole? Tell me that, Mr. Flask. How do you suppose Fedallah is, Stubb? Do you see that the main mast there, pointing to the ship. Well, that's the bigger one. Now take all the hoops in the Pequod's hold and string them along in a row that the mast for oughts. Do you see? Well, that wouldn't begin to be Fadala's age, nor all the Coopers in creation couldn't show hoops enough to make oughts enough. But see here, Stubb, I thought you were a little boasted just now, that you meant to give Fadala a sea toss, if you got a good chance. Now, if he's so old, all those hoops of yours come to, and he is going to live forever, what good will it do to pitch him overboard? Tell me that. Give him a good ducking anyhow. But he'd crawl back, duck him again, and keep ducking him. Suppose he should take it into his head to duck you, though yes, and drown you. What then? I should like to see him try. I'd give him such a pair of black eyes that he wouldn't dare to show his face in the Admiral's cabin again for a long while, let alone down the Orlip there, where he lives in his hereabouts, on the upper decks where he sneaks so much. Damn the devil, Flask! Do you suppose I'm afraid of the devil? Who's afraid of him except the old governor who dares to catch him, but put him in the double darbies, as he deserves, but lets him go about kidnapping people, aye? And signed a bond with them that all the people the devil kidnapped, he'd roast for him. There's the governor. Do you suppose Fadala wants to kidnap Captain Ahab? Do I suppose it? You'll know it before long, Flask, but I'm going to keep a sharp lookout on him. And if I see anything very suspicious going on, I'll take him by the nape of his neck and say, look here, Beelzebub, you don't do it. And if it makes any fuss, by the Lord, I'll make a grab into his pocket and for his tail and take it to the capstan, and give him such a wrenching and a heaving that his tail will come short off at the stump. Do you see? And then I rather guess when he finds himself docked in that queer fashion, he'll sneak off without the poor satisfaction of feeling his tail between his legs. And what will you do with the tail, Stubb? Do with it? Sell it for an ox whip when we get home. What else? Now, do you mean what you say and have been saying all along, Stubb? Mean or not mean? Here we are at the ship. The boats were here hailed to tow the whale and the larboard side, where the fluke chains and the other necessaries were already prepared for securing him. Didn't I tell you so? Said Flask. Yes, you'll soon see the right whale's head hoisted up opposite the Parmacetes. In good time, Flask's saying proved true, as before the Pequod steeply leaned over towards the sperm whale's head. Now, by the counterpoise of both heads, she regained her even keel. They're sorely strained, you may well believe. So when on one side you hoist in the lock's head, you go over that way. But now, on the other side, hoist in Cant's mine, you come back again, but in a very poor plight. Thus, some minds forever keep trimming boat. Oh, ye foolish, throw all the thunderbolts overboard, and then you will float light and right. In disposing of the body of the right whale, when brought alongside the ship, the same preliminary proceedings commonly take place in the case of the sperm whale. Only in the latter instance the head is cut off the whole, but in the former the lips and tongue are separated, removed, and hoisted on deck, with all the well-known black bone attached to what is called the crown piece. But nothing like this in the present case has been done. The carcass of both whales had dropped astern, and the head-laden ship not a little resembled a mule carrying a pair of odor-burdering panniers. Meantime, Fadala was calmly eyeing the right whale's head, and ever and anon glancing from the deep wrinkles, there's 2 lines of his own head. And Ahab chanced so to stand that the Parsee occupied his shadow. While if the Parsee's shadow was there at all, it seemed only to blend and lengthen. As the crew toiled on, Outlandish speculations were bandied among them concerning all the passing things.
Chapter 74. The sperm whale's head contrasted view. Here now are two great whales laying their heads together. Let us join them and lay together our own. Of the grand order of folio leviathans, the sperm whale and the right whale are by far the most noteworthy. They're the only whales regularly hunted by man. To the Nantucketer, they present the two extremes of all the known varieties of the whale. As the external difference between them is mainly observable in their heads, and as the head of each is this moment hanging from the flat side, and as we may freely go from one to the other by merely stepping across the deck, where, I should like to know, if you would take a better chance to study practical cetology than here. In the first place, you're struck by the general contrast between these heads. Both are massive enough in all conscience. There's a certain mathematical symmetry in the sperm whales, which the right whales sadly lack. There is more character in the sperm whale's head. As you behold it, you involuntarily yield the immense superiority to him in point of pervading dignity. In the present instance, too, this dignity is heightened by the pepper and salt color of his head at the summit, giving token of advanced age and large experience. In short, he is what the fishermen technically call a gray-headed whale. Let us now note what is least dissimilar in these heads, namely the two most important organs, the eye and the ear. Far back on the side of the head and low down, near the angle of either whale's jaw, if you narrowly search, you'll at least see a lashless eye, which you would fancy to be a young colt's eye, so out of all proportion is it to the magnitude of the head. Now, from this particular sideway position of the whale's eyes, it's plain he can never see an object which is exactly ahead, no more than he can see one exactly astern. In a word, the position of the whale's eyes corresponds to that of a man's ears. And you may fancy for yourself how it would fare with you did you sideways survey objects through your ears. You'd find you could only command some 30 degrees of vision in advance of the straight sideline of sight, and about 30 more behind it. If your bitterest foe were walking straight towards you with a dagger uplifted in broad day, you would not be able to see him, any more than if he were stealing up behind you from behind. In a word, you would have two backs, so to speak, but at the same time also two fronts. Side fronts. For what is it that makes the front of a man? What indeed but his eyes? Moreover, while in most other animals that I can now think of, the eyes are so planted as imperceptibly to blend with their visual power, so as to produce one picture and not two to the brain. The peculiar position of the whale's eyes, effectually divided as they are by many cubic feet of solid head, which towers between them like a great mountain separating two lakes and valleys. This, of course, must wholly separate the impressions from which each independent organ imparts. The whale, therefore, must see one distinct picture on this side and another distinct picture on that side, while all between must be profound darkness and nothingness to him. Man may, in effect, be said to look out on the world from a sentry box with two joint sashes for his window. But with the whale, these two sashes are separately inserted, making two distinct windows, but sadly impairing the view. This peculiarity of the whale's eyes is a thing always to be borne in mind in the fishery and to be remembered by the reader in some subsequent scenes. A curious and most puzzling question might be started concerning this visual matter as touching the Leviathan, but I must be content with a hint. So long as a man's eyes are open in the light, the act of seeing is involuntary. That is, he can't help that mechanically seeing whatever objects are before him. Nevertheless, anyone's experience will teach him that though he can take in an indiscriminating sweep of things at one glance, it's quite impossible for him attentively and completely to examine any two things, however large or however small, at one and the same instant of time. Never mind if they lie side by side and touch each other. But if you now come to separate these two objects and surround each by a circle of profound darkness, then in order to see one of them, such a manner as to bring your mind to bear on it, the other would be utterly excluded from your contemporary consciousness. How is it then with the whale? True, both his eyes in themselves must simultaneously act, but it is his brain so much more comprehensive, combining, and subtle than man's, that he can at the same moment of time attentively examine two distinct prospects, one on one side of him and the other in exactly the opposite direction. If he can, then it's a marvelous thing in him. As if a man were able to simultaneously go through the demonstrations of two distinct problems in Euclid. nor strictly investigated is there any incongruity in this comparison. It may be about an idle whim, but it has always seemed to me that the extraordinary vacillations of movement displayed by some whales when beset by 3 or 4 boats, the timidity and liability to queer frights, so common to such whales, I think that all this indirectly proceeds from the helpless perplexity of volition in which their divided and diametrically opposed powers of vision must involve them. But the ear of the whale is full as curious as the eye. If you're an entire stranger to their race, you might hunt over these 2 heads for hours and never discover that organ. The ear has no external leaf whatever, and into the hole itself you can hardly insert a quill, so wondrously minute is it. It is lodged a little behind the eye. With respect to their ears, this important difference is to be observed between the sperm whale and the right. While the ear of the former has an external opening, that of the latter is entirely and evenly covered over with a membrane, so as to be quite imperceptible from without. Is it not curious that so vast a being as a whale should see the world through so small an eye, and hear the thunder through an ear which is smaller than a hair's? But if his eyes were broad as the lens of Herschel's great telescope, and his ears capacious as the porches of cathedrals, would that make him any longer of sight or sharper of hearing? Not at all. Why then do you try to enlarge your minds? Subtleize it. Let's now look whatever levers of steam engines we have at hand, hands over the sperm whale's head, that it may lie bottoms up. Then, ascending by a ladder to the summit, have a peep down at the mouth. And were it not that the body is now completely separated from it, with a lantern we might descend into the great Kentucky mammoth cave of his stomach. But let us hold on here by this tooth and look about us where we are. What a really beautiful and chaste-looking mouth! From floor to ceiling, lined in rather papered with glistening white membrane, glossy as bridal satins. But come out now and look at this portentous lower jaw, which seems like the long, narrow lid of an immense snuff-box, with the hinge at one end instead of one side. If you pry it up so as to get it overhead and expose its rows of teeth, it seems a terrific portcullis. And such, alas, it proves to many poor white in the fishery, upon whom these spikes fall with impelling force. But far more terrible is it to behold when fathoms down in the sea you see some sulky whale floating there suspended, with his prodigious jaw, some 15 feet long, hanging straight down at right angles with his body, for all the world like a ship's jib-boom. This whale is not dead, he is only dispirited, out of sorts perhaps, hypochondriac, and so supine, and the hinges of his jaw have relaxed, leaving him there in that ungainly sort of plight, a reproach to all his tribe, who must, no doubt, imprecate lockjaws upon him. In most cases, this lower jaw, being easily unhinged by a practiced artist, is disengaged and placed on deck for the purpose of extracting the ivory teeth, and furnishing a supply of that hard white whalebone with which the fishermen fashion all sorts of curious articles, including canes, umbrella stocks, and handles to riding whips. With a long, weary voice, the jaw is dragged on board as if it were an anchor. And when the proper time comes, some few days after the other work, Quiqui, Dadu, and Tashtigo, being all accomplished dentists, are set to drawing teeth. With a keen cutting spade, Quiqui lances the gums, then the jaw is lashed down to wrinkles, and a tackle being rigged from aloft, they drag out these teeth, as Michigan oxen drag stumps of old oaks out of the wild wood limbs. There are generally 42 teeth in all, in old whales, much worn down, but undecayed, nor filled after our artificial fashion. The jaw is afterwards sawn into slabs and piled away like joists for building houses. Chapter 75, the right whale's head, contrasted view. Crossing the deck, let us now have a good long look at the right whale's head. As in general shape, the noble sperm whale's head may be compared to a Roman war chariot, especially in front where it's so broadly rounded. So, at a broad view, the right whale's head bears a rather inelegant resemblance to a gigantic galliot-toed shoe. 200 years ago, an old Dutch voyager likened its shape to that of a shoemaker's lath. And in the same last or shoe, that old woman of the nursery tale, with the swarming brood, might very comfortably be lodged, she and all her progeny. But as you come nearer to this great head, it begins to assume different aspects according to your point of view. If you stand on its summit and look at these two F-shaped spout holes, you take the whole head for an enormous space of feel, and these spiracles, the apertures in its sounding board. Then again, if you fix your eye upon this strange cone-like incrustation on the top of the mat, this green barnacle thing, which the Greenlanders call the crown, and the southern fishers the bonnet of the right whale. Fixing your eyes solely on this, you would take the head for the trunk of some huge oak with a bird's nest in its crotch. At any rate, when you watch those live crabs that nestle here on this bonnet, such an idea will almost sure to occur to you. Unless, indeed, your fancy has been fixed by the technical term crown also bestowed on it, in which case you'll take great interest in thinking how this mighty monster is actually a diadem king of the sea, whose main crown has been put together for him in this marvelous manner. But if this whale be a king, he's a very sulky-looking fellow to grace a diadem. Look at that hanging lower lip. What a huge silken pout is there. Silken pout by carpenter's measurement, about 20 feet long and 5 feet deep, a silken pout that would yield you some 500 gallons of oil and more. A great pity now that this unfortunate whale should be hair-lipped. The fissure is about a foot across. Probably the mother, during an important interval, was sailing down the Peruvian coast when earthquakes caused the beach to gape. Over this lip, over the slippery threshold, we now slide into the mouth. Upon my word, were I at Mackinac, I should take this to be the inside of a wigwam. Good Lord, is this the road that Jonah went? The roof is about 12 feet high and runs to a pretty sharp angle, as if there were regular ridgepole there, while these ribbed, arched, hairy sides present us as those wonderful half-vertical scimitar-shaped slats of whalebone, say 300 on a side, which, depending on the upper part of the head or crown bone, form those Venetian blinds which have elsewhere been cursorily mentioned. The edges of these bones are fringed with hairy fibers through which the right whale strains the water, and in those whose intricacies he retains a small fish. When open-mouthed, goes through the seas for it in feeding time. In the central lines of bone, as they stand in their natural order, there are certain curious marks, curves, hollows, and ridges, whereby some whalemen calculate the creature's age, as the age of an oak by its circular rings. Though the certainty of this criterion is far from demonstrable, yet it has the savor of an analogical probability. At any rate, if we yield to it, we must grant a far greater age to the right whale than at first glance will seem reasonable. In all times, there seems to have prevailed the most curious fancies concerning these lines. One voyager in Hertas calls them the wondrous whiskers inside the whale's mouth, another hog's bristles, a third old gentleman in half-blue uses the following elegant language. There are about 250 fins growing on each side of his upper chop, which arch over his tongue on each side of his mouth. As everyone knows, these same hog's bristles, fins, whiskers, lines, or whatever you please, furnish to the ladies their busts and other stiffening contrivances. But in this particular, the demand has long been on the decline. It was in Queen Anne's time that the bone was in its glory, the farthingale being then all the fashion. And as those ancient dames moved about gaily, though in the jaws of a whale, as you may say, even so, in the shower, with the right thoughtlessness, do we nowadays fly under the same jaws for protection, the umbrella being a tent spread over the same bone. But now forget all about lines and whiskers for a moment, and stand in the right whale's mouth. Look around you afresh. See all these colonnades of bone so methodically ranged about. Would you not think you were inside of a great Harlem organ, gazing upon 1,000 pipes? For a carpet to the organ, we have a rug as soft as turkey, tongue, which is glued as it were to the floor of the mouth. It's very fat and tender, and apt to tear in pieces and hoisting it on the deck. This particular tongue now before us at a passing bench, I should say it was a 6-barreler, that is, it will yield you that amount of oil. Ere this, you must have plainly seen the truth of what I started with, that the sperm whale and the right whale have almost entirely different heads. To sum up then, in the right whales, there is no great wall of sperm, no ivory teeth at all, no slender, long mandible with a lower jaw like the sperm whales. Nor in the sperm whale are there any of those lines of bone, no huge lower lip, and scarcely anything of a tongue. Again, the right whale has 2 external spoutals, and the sperm whale only 1. We'll hear last now on these venerable hooded heads while they yet lie together, for one will soon sink unreported into the sea. The other will be not very long in following. Can you catch the expression of the sperm whales there? It's the same he died with, only some of the longer wrinkles of his forehead seem now faded away. I think his broad bow to be full of a prairie-like placidity, born of a speculative indifference as to death. But mark the other head's expression. See that amazing lower lip, pressed by accident against the vessel's thigh, so as firmly to embrace the jaw. Does not this whole head seem to speak of an enormous practical resolution in facing death? This right whale I take to have been a Stoic, the sperm whale a Platonian, who might have taken up Spinoza in his latter years.
The battering ram. Ere quitting for the nonce the sperm whale's head, I would have you, as a sensible physiologist, simply, particularly, remark at its front aspect and all of its compacted collectedness. I would have you investigate it now, with the sole view of forming to yourself some unexaggerated, intelligent estimate of whatever battering ram power may be lodged there. Here is a vital point, for you must either satisfactorily settle this matter with yourself, or forever remain an infidel as to one of the most appalling, but not the less true events, perhaps anywhere to be found in all of recorded history. You observe that in the ordinary swimming position of the sperm whale, the front of his head presents an almost wholly vertical plane to the water. You observe that the lower part of the front slopes considerably backwards, so as to furnish more of the retreat for the long socket which receives the boom-like lower jaw. You observe that the mouth is entirely under the head, much of in the same way, indeed, that your own mouth were entirely under your chin. Moreover, you observe that the whale has no external nose, and that what nose he has, his spout hole is on the top of his head. You observe that his eyes and ears are at the sides of his head, nearly 1/3 of his entire length from the front. Wherefore, you must now have perceived that the front of the sperm whale's head is dead, blind wall, without a single organ or tender prominence of any sort whatsoever. Furthermore, you are now to consider that only in the extreme lower backward sloping part of the front of the head is there the slightest vestige of bone, and not till you get near 20 feet from the forehead do you come to the full cranial development. So that this whole enormous boneless mass is as one wad. Finally, though, as will soon be revealed, its contents particularly comprise the most delicate oil. Yet you are now to be apprised of the nature of the substance which so impregnably invests all of the apparent effeminacy. In some previous place, I have described to you how the blubber wraps the body of the whale, as the rind wraps the orange, just so that the head, but with the head this implement, though not so thick, is of a boneless toughness, inestimable by any man who has not handled it. The severest pointed harpoon, the sharpest lance darted at the strongest human arm, impotently rebounds from it. It has, though, the forehead of the sperm whale were paved with horses' hooves. I do not think that any sensation lurks in it. Bethink yourself also of another thing. When 2 large loaded Indian men chance to crowd and crush towards each other in the docks, what do the sailors do? They do not suspend between them at the point of coming contact a merely hard substance like iron or wood. No, they hold there a large round wad of tow and cork enveloped in the thickest and tough of an oxen hide, that bravely and uninjured takes the jam, which would have snapped all of their oaken spikes and iron crowbars. By itself, this illustrates that the obvious fact I drive at. But supplementary to this, it has hypothetically occurred to me that as the ordinary fish possesses what is called a swimming bladder in them, capable at will of distension or contraction, and as the sperm whale, as far as I know, has no such provision in him, considering too that the otherwise inexplicable manner in which he now depresses his head altogether beneath the surface and swims with it high elevated out of the water, considering the unobstructed elasticity of its envelope, considering the unique interior of the head, it has hypothetically occurred to me, I say, that those mystical long-celled honeycombs there may possibly have some hitherto unknown and unsuspected connection with the outer air, so as to be susceptible to the atmospheric distension and contraction. If this be so, fancy the irresistibleness of that might to which the most impalpable and destructive of all elements contributes. Now mark, unraveling, impelling this dead, impregnable, uninjurable wall, and this most buoyant thing within, there swims behind it a mass of tremendous life, only to be adequately estimated as piled wood is by the cord, and all obedient to one violation as the smallest insect. So that when I shall hereafter detail to you all the specificities, all the specialities of the concentrations of potency everywhere lurking in this expensive monster, when I shall show you some of his more inconsiderable brainy feats, I trust you will have renounced all ignorant incredulity and be here to abide by this. Though, in the sperm whale stove a passage through the Isthmus of Darien and mixed with the Atlantic and the Pacific, you would not elevate one hair of your eyebrow. For unless you own the whale, you are but a provincial and sentimentalist in truth. But clear truth is a thing for salamander giants only to encounter. How small the chances for the provincials then? What befell the weakening youth lifting the dread, godless veil of Sais? The great Heidelberg tongue. Now comes the bailing of the case. But to comprehend it aright, you must know something of the curious internal structure of the thing operated on. Regarding the sperm whale's head as a solid oblong, you may on an inclined plane sideways divided into two points, whereof the lower is the bony structure forming the cranium and jaws, and the upper unctuous mass wholly free from the bones, its broad forward end forming the expanded vertical apparent forehead of the whale. At the middle of the forehead, horizontally subdivide this upper point. And then you have two almost equal parts, which before were naturally divided by an internal wall of thick, tendinous substance. The lower subdivided part, called the jump, is one immense honeycomb of oil, formed by the crossing and the recrossing into the 10,000 infiltrated cells of the tough, elastic white fibers throughout its whole extent. The upper part, known as the case, may be regarded as the great Heidelberg ton of the sperm whale, and as that famous great tierce is mystically carved in front, so the whale's vast plated forehead forms innumerable strange devices for the emblematical adornment of his wondrous tongue. Moreover, as that of the Heidelberg was always replenished with the most excellent of the wines of the Rhenish valleys, so the tongue of the whale contains by far the most precious of all his oily vintages, namely the highly prized spermaceti, in its absolute pure, limpid, and odoriferous state. Nor is this precious substance found unalloyed in any other part of the creature. Though in life it remains perfectly fluid, yet upon sure to the air after death, it soon begins to concrete, sending forth beautiful crystalline shoots, as when the first delicate ice just forming in water. A large whale's case generally yields about 500 gallons of sperm. Through the unavoidably circumstances, considerable of its spilled leaks and dribbles away, or is otherwise irrevocably lost in the ticklish business of securing what you can. I know not with what fine a costly material of the Heidelberg tun was coated within, but the superlative richness and coating could not possibly have compared with the silken pearl-colored membrane that is lining a fine pellice, forming the inner surface of the sperm whale's case. It will have been that the Heidelberg tun of the sperm whale embraces the entire length of the top of the head, and since, as has been elsewhere set forth, the head embraces 1/3 of the whole length of the creature, then setting that length down 80 feet for a good-sized whale, you have more than 26 feet for depth in ton, when it is lengthwise hoisted up and down against the ship's side. As in decapitating the whale, the operator's instrument is brought close to the spot where the entrance is subsequently forced into the spermaceti magazine. He has, therefore, to be an uncommonly heedful lest careless, untimely stroke should invade the sanctuary and wasting let its invaluable contents. It is this decapitated end of the head, also, which is last elevated out of the water and retained in that position by an enormous cutting tackles, whose hampen combinations on one side make quite a wilderness of ropes in that quarter. Thus much being said, attend now, I pray you, to that marvelous and, in this particular instance, almost fatal operation where the sperm whale's Heidelberg tun is tapped.
Cistern and bucket. Nimble as a cat, Testito mounts aloft, and without altering his erect posture, runs straight out upon the overhanging mainyard arm, or to the part where it exactly projects over the hoisted tune. He's carried with him a light tackle called a whip, consisting of only 2 parts, traveling through a single sheet block. Securing this block so that it hangs down from the yard arm, he swings one end of the rope till it's caught and firmly held by hand on deck. Then hand over hand down the other part, the Indian drops through the air till dexterously he lands on the summit of the head. There, still high elevated above the rest of the company, to whom he vivaciously cries, he sees some Turkish muezzin calling the good people to prayers from the top of the tower. A short-handled sharp spade being sent up to him, he diligently searches for the proper place to begin breaking into the tune. In this business, he proceeds very heedfully, like a treasure hunter in some old house, sounding the walls to find where the gold is masoned in. By the time this cautious search is over, a stout iron-bound bucket, precisely like a well bucket, has been attached to one end of the whip, while the other end, being stretched across the deck, is there held by 2 or 3 alert hands. These lads now hoist the bucket within grasp of the Indian, to whom another person has reached up a very long pole. Inserting this pole into the bucket, Testito downward guides the bucket into the tune till it entirely disappears, then giving the word to the seaman at the whip, up comes the bucket again, all bubbly like a dairy maid's pail of new milk. Carefully lowered from its height, the full freighted vessel is caught by an unweighted hand and quickly emptied into a large tub. Then remounted aloft, it again goes through the same round until the deep cistern will yield no more. Towards the end, Testito has to ram his long pole harder and harder and deeper into the tune until some 20 feet of the pole have gone down. Now, the people of the Pequot have been bailing some time in this way. Several tubs have been filled with the fragrant sperm, when all at once a queer accident happened. Whether it was that Testito, that wild Indian, was so heedless and reckless as to let go for a moment, his one-handed hold on the great cable tackle suspending the head, or whether the place where he stood was so treacherous and oozy, or whether the evil one himself would have it to fall out so, without stating his particular reason, how it was exactly, There was no telling now, but on a sudden, as the 80th and 90th bucket came suckingly up, my God, poor Tashtigo, like the twin reciprocating bucket in a veritable well, dropped head foremost down into the great tune of Heidelberg, and with a horrible, oily gurgling, went clean out of sight. "Man overboard!" cried Deku, who amid the general consternation first came to his senses. "Swing the bucket this way!" And putting one foot into it, so as the better to secure his slippery handhold on the whip itself, the hoisters ran him high up to the top of the head, almost before Tashtigo could have reached its interior bottom. Meantime, there was a terrible tumult. Looking over the side, they saw the poor lifeless head throbbing and heaving just below the surface of the sea, as if that moment seized with some momentous idea, whereas it was only the poor Indian unconsciously revealing by those struggles the perilous depth to which he had sunk. At this instant, while Dagu on the summit of the head was clearing the whip, which had somehow got foul of the great cutting tackles, a sharp cracking noise was heard, and the unspeakable horror of all, one of the two enormous hooks suspended the head in the head tore out. With a vast vibration, the enormous mass sideways swung till the drunk ship reeled and shook as if smitten by an iceberg. The one remaining hook upon which the entire strain now depended seemed every instant to be on the point of giving way, and it had still more likely from the violent motions of the head. Come down, yelled the seaman to Dagu, but with one hand holding under the heavy tackles so that if the head should drop, he would remain still suspended. The Negro, having cleared the foul line, ran the bucket into the now collapsed well, meaning that the very harpooner should grasp it and so be hoisted out. In heaven's name, man, cried Stubb, are you ramming home a cartridge there? Avast! How would that help him jamming that iron-bound bucket on top of his head? Avast, will ye? Stand clear of the tackle! Cried a voice like the bursting of a rocket. Almost in the same instant, with the thunder boom, the enormous mass dropped into the sea, like Niagara's table rock into the whirlpool. The suddenly relieved hull rolled away from it, so far down from this glittering copper, and all caught their breath as, half swinging now over the sailors' heads and now over the water, Dagu, through a thick mist of spray, was dimly beheld clinging to the pendulous tackles, while poor buried alive Tashtigo was sinking utterly down to the bottom of the sea. But hardly had the blinding vapor cleared away when a naked figure with a boarding sword in its hand was for one swift moment seen hovering over the bulwarks. The next, a loud splash announced that my brave Queequeg had dived to the rescue. One packed rush was made to the side, and every eye counted every ripple, as the moment followed moment, and no sign of either the sinker or the diver could be seen. Some hands now jumped into the boat alongside and pushed a little up from the ship. "Ha ha!" cried Dagu all at once, from now his quiet, swinging perch overhead. Looking further off from the side, we saw an arm thrust upright from the blue waves. A sight strange to see as an arm thrust forth from grass over a grave. "Booth! Booth! It is Booth!" cried Dagu, again with a joyful shout, and soon after, Queequeg was seen boldly striking out with one hand, and with the other clutching the long hair of the Indian. Drawn into the waiting boat, they were quickly brought to the deck. But Tashtigo was long in coming to, and Queequeg didn't look very brisk. Now, how had this noble rescue been accomplished? Why, diving after the slowly descending head, Queequeg with his keen sword had made side lunges near its bottom, so as to scuttle a large hole there. Then, dropping his sword, had thrust his long arm far inwards and upwards, and so hauled out our poor Tash by the head. He averred that upon first thrusting in for him, a leg was presented. But well knowing that was not as it ought to be, and might occasion great trouble, he had thrust back the leg, and by a dexterous heave and toss had brought a somerset upon the Indian, so that with the next trial he came forth in the good old way, head foremost. As for the great head itself, that was doing as well as could be expected. And thus, through the courage and great skill in obstetrics of Queequeg, the deliverance or rather delivery of Tashtigo was successfully accomplished, in the teeth, too, of the most untoward and apparently hopeless impediments, which is a lesson by no means to be forgotten. Midwifery should be taught in the same course as fencing and boxing, riding and rowing. I know that this queer adventure of the gay headers will be sure to seem incredible to some landsmen, though they themselves may have either seen or heard of someone falling into a cistern ashore, an accident which not seldom happens, and with much less reason too than the Indians, considering the exceeding slipperiness of the curve of the sperm whale's well. But peradventure it may be sagaciously urged, how is this? We thought the tissued, infiltrated head of the sperm whale was the lightest and most corky part about him, and yet thou makest it sink in an element far greater specific gravity than itself. We have thee there. Not at all, but I have ye, for at the time poor Tash fell in, the case had been nearly emptied of its lighter contents, leaving little but the dense, tenacious well of that wall of the well. A double-welded hammered substance, as I said before, much heavier than the seawater, and a lump of which sinks in it like lead almost. But the tendency to rapid sinking in this substance was the present instance materially counteracted by the other parts of the head remaining undetached from it, so that it sank very slowly and deliberately indeed, affording Quigley the fair chance for performing his agile obstetrics on the run, as you may say. Yes, it was running delivery, so it was. Now, had Tashtego perished in that head, it had been a very precious perishing, smothered in the very whitest and daintiest of fragrance vermicetti, coffined, hearsed, entombed in the secret inner chamber and sanctum sanctorum of the whale. Only one sweeter end can readily be recalled, the delicious death of an Ohio honey hunter, who, seeking honey in the crotch of a hollow tree, found such an exceeding store of it, that leaning too far over, it sucked him in, so that he died and foamed. How many, think ye, have likewise fallen into Plato's honey head, and sweetly perished there?
The third, to scan the lines of his face, or to feel the bumps on the head of his leviathan. This is a thing which no physiognomist or phrenologist has as yet undertaken. Such an enterprise would seem almost as hopeful as for Lavender to have scrutinized the wrinkles on the rock of Gibraltar, or for Gaul to have mounted a ladder and manipulated the dome of the Pantheon. Still, in the famous work of his, Lavater not only treats the various faces of men, but also attentively studies the faces of horses, birds, serpents, and fish, and dwells in detail upon the modifications of expression discernible therein. Nor have Gall and his disciple Spurzheim failed to throw out some hints touching the phrenological characteristics of being of other beings than man. Therefore, though I am but ill qualified for a high here, in the application of these two semi-sciences to the whale, I will do my endeavors. I try all things, I achieve what I can. Physiognomically regarded, the sperm whale is an anomalous creature. He has no proper nose, and since the nose is the central and most conspicuous of the features, its incentive perhaps most modifies and entirely controls their combined experience. Hence it would seem that its entire absence, as an external appendage, must very largely affect the countenance of the whale. For as in landscape gardening, a spire, cupola, monument, or tower of some sort is deemed most indispensable to the completion of the scene, so no face can be physiognomically in keeping without the elevated open-work belfry of the nose. Dash the nose from Phidias's marble Jove, and what a sorry remainder. Nevertheless, Leviathan is of so mighty a magnitude, all his proportions are so stately, that the same deficiency which in the sculpture Jove was hideous, in him is no blemish at all. Nay, it is an added grandeur. A nose to the whale would have been impertinent. As on your physiognomical voyage you sail round his vast head in your jolly boat, your noble conceptions of him are never insulted by the reflection that he has a nose to behold, a pestilent conceit which so often will insist upon obtruding, even when beholding the mightiest royal beetle on his throne. In some particulars, perhaps, the most imposing physiognomical view had to be had of this whale is that of the full front of his head. This aspect is sublime. In thought, a fine human brow is like the east, when troubled in the morning. In the repose of the pasture, the curled brow of the bull has a touch of the granite, pushing heavy cannon up mountain defiles, elephant's brow is majestic. Human or animal, the mystical brow is as the great golden seal affixed by the German emperors to their decrees. It signifies, God, done this day by my hand. But in most creatures, nay man himself, very often the brow is but a mere strip of alpine land lying along the snow line. Few are the foreheads which, like Shakespeare's or Melanchthon's, rise so hard and ascend so low that the eyes themselves seem clear, eternal, tideless mountain lakes. And all above them in the forehead's wrinkles, you seem to track the antlered thoughts descending there to drink, as the Highland hunters track the snow prints of the deer. But in the great sperm whale, this high and mighty godlike dignity inherent in the brow is so immensely amplified that gazing on it in that full front view, you feel the deity and dread powers more forcibly than in beholding any other object of human nature. For you see no one point precisely, not one distinct feature is revealed, no nose, eyes, ears, or mouth, no face. He has none proper. Nothing but that one broad firmament of the forehead, pleated in grills, dumbly lowering the doom of boats and ships and men. Nor in profile does this wondrous brow diminish, though that with view expanded does not domineer upon yourself. In profile, you clearly perceive that horizontal, semi-descending depression in the forehead's middle, which in a man is the body's mark for genius. But how? Genius in the sperm whale? Has the sperm whale ever written a book, spoken a speech? No, his great genius is declared, and he's doing nothing particular to prove it. It is moreover declared in his pure mental silence. And this reminds me that had the great sperm whale been known to the young Orient world, he would have been deified. He would have been deified as their child magnet thoughts. They deified the crocodile of the Nile because the crocodile is tongueless, and the sperm whale has no tongue, or at least it is so exceedingly small as to be incapable of protrusion. If hereafter any highly cultured poetical nation shall lure back to their birthright the very invaded gods of old, and vividly affirm them again with the now egotistical sky, and the now unhaunted hill, then be sure, exalted to Jove's high seat, the great sperm whale shall lure him. Champollion deciphered the wrinkled granite hieroglyphics, but there is no Champollion to decipher the Egypt of every man's and every being's face. Physiognomy, like every other human science, is but a passive fable. If then, Sir William Jones, who read 30 languages, could not read the simplest person's face and its profounder and more subtle meanings, how may unlettered Ishmael hope to read the awful tragedy of the sperm whale's brow? I have put that brow before you. Read it if you can.
Then none. If the sperm whale be physiognomically a sphinx, to the phrenologist his brain seems that geometrical circle which is impossible to square. In the full-grown creature, the skull will measure at least 20 feet in length. Unhinge the lower jaw, and the side view of this skull is as the side view of a moderately inclined plane resting throughout on the level base. But in life, as we have seen elsewhere, this inclined plane is angularly filled up and almost squared by the enormous superincumbent mass of the jumping sperm. The high end, the skull forms a crater to fed that part of the mass, while under the long floor of this crater and another cavity seldom exceeding 10 inches in length and as many in depth, reposes the mere handful of this monstrous brain. The brain is at least 20 feet from his apparent forehead in length. It is hidden away behind its vast outworks, like the innermost citadel within the amplified fortifications of the back. So like a choice casket, it is secreted in him, that I have known some whalemen who peremptorily deny that the sperm whale has any other brain than the palpable semblance of one formed by the cubic yards of his sperm magazine. Lying in strange folds, courses, and convolutions to their apprehensions, it seems more in keeping with the idea of his general mind to regard that mystic part of him as the seat of his intelligence. It is plain then that chronologically, the head of this Leviathan in the creature's living intact state is an entire delusion. As for his true brain, you can then see no indications of it nor feel any. The whale, like all things that are mighty, bears a false brow to the common world. If you unload his skull of its spermy heaps and take a rear view of its rear end, which is the high end, you'll be struck by its some resemblance to the human skull held in the same situation, and from the same point of view. Indeed, place this reverse skull, scaled down to human magnitude, among a plate of men's skulls, and you would involuntarily confound it with them, and remarking the depressions on one part of its summit, in phrenological phrase, you would say, this man had no self-esteem and no veneration. And by those negations, considered along the affirmative fact of his prodigious bulk and power, you can best form to yourself the truest, though not the most exhilarating conception of what the most exalted potency is. But if from the comparative dimensions of the whale's proper brain you deem it incapable of being adequately charted, then I have another idea for you. If you attentively regard almost any quadruped's spine, you'll be struck with the resemblance of its vertebra to a strung necklace of dwarfed skulls, all bearing rudimental resemblance to the skull proper. It is a German conceit that the vertebrae are absolutely undeveloped skulls. But the curious external resemblance, I take it, the Germans were not the first men to perceive. A foreign friend once pointed it out to me in the skeleton of a foe he had slain, and with the vertebra of which he was inlaying in a sort of basso relievo the peaked brow of his canoe. Now, I consider that the phrenologists have omitted an important thing in not pushing their investigations from the cerebellum through the spinal canal. For I believe that much of a man's character will be found betokened in his backbone. I would rather feel your spine than your skull, whoever you are. A thin joist of the spine never yet upheld a full and noble soul. I rejoice in my spine, as the firm, audacious staff of that flag which I fling half out to the world. Apply the spinal branch of phrenology to the sperm whale. His cranial cavity is continuous with the first neck vertebra, and in that vertebra, the bottom of the spinal canal will measure 10 inches across, being 8 in height, and of a triangular figure with the base downwards. As it passes through the remaining vertebra, the canal tapers in size, but for a considerable distance remains of a large capacity. Now, of course, this canal is filled with much the same strangely fibrous substance, the spinal cord, as the brain, and directly communicates with the brain. And what is still more, for many feet after emerging from the brain's cavity, the spinal cord remains of an undecreasing girth, almost equal to that of the brain. Under all these circumstances, would it be unreasonable to survey and map out the whale's spine phrenologically? Reviewed in this light, the wonderful comparative smallness of his brain proper is more than compensated by the wonderful comparative magnitude of his spinal cord. But leaving this hint to operate as it may with the phrenologist, I would merely assume the spinal theory for a moment in reference to the sperm whale's hump. This august hump, if I mistake not, rises over one of the larger vertebrae, and is therefore in some sort the outer convex mold of it. From its relative situation, then, I should call this high hump the organ of firmness or indomitableness in the sperm whale. And that the great monster is indomitable, you will yet have reason to know.
Chapter 81. The Pequod meets in the prison. The three vessels today arrived, and the Hewing membership, Jungfrau, Derek Deer, master of ground. At one time, the greatest whaling people in the world, the Dutch and Germans, are now among the least. But here and there, at very wide intervals of latitude and longitude, you still occasionally meet their flag in the Pacific. For some reason, the Jungfrau seemed quite eager to pay her respects. While yet some distance from the Pequod, she rounded to, and dropping a boat, her captain was impelled toward it. Impatiently standing on the bows instead of the stern. What is he in his hand there? Cried Starbuck, pointing to something waving to be held by the German. Impossible, a lamp feeder. Not that stuff, said Stubb. No, it's a coffee pot, Mr. Starbuck. He's coming to make us our coffee. It's the yarn. Don't you see that big tin can up there alongside him? That's his boiling water. Oh, he's all right. Is the yarn. Go along with you, said Flat. It's a land feeder in an oil can. He's out of oil, and he's coming begging. However curious it may seem for an oil ship to be borrowing oil on the whale ground, and however much it may be inverted to contradict the old proverb about carrying coals to Newcastle, yet sometimes such a thing really happens. And in the present case, Captain Derek Adair did indubitably conduct a land feeder as Flask had declared. As he mounted the deck, Ahab abruptly accosted him without at all heeding what he had in his hand. But in his broken window, the German soon evidenced his complete ignorance of the white whale, immediately turning the conversation to his land feeder at oil can, with some remarks touching his having to turn into his hand at night in profound darkness, his last drop of brown oil being gone, and not a single frying fish yet captured to supply the deficiency. Concluding by hinting that his ship was indeed what in the fishery is technically called a clean one, that is, an empty one, well deserving the name of Jungfrau over the Virgin. His necessity supplied, Derek departed, but he had not gained the ship's side when whales were almost simultaneously raised from the mastheads of both vessels, and so eager for the chase was Derek that without pausing to put an oil can and land feeder aboard, he slewed round his boat and made after the Leviathan land feeders. Now that they had cruised to leeward, he and the other 3 German boats that soon followed him had considered the start of the Pequod's keels. There were 8 whales in average pod. Aware of their danger, they were going all abreast with great speed straight before the wind, rubbing their flanks so close as so many hands, spans of the horses and harness. They left a great wide wake, as though continuously unrolling a great wide parchment upon the sea. Full in this rapid wake, and many fathoms in the rear, swam a huge humped old bull, which by his comparatively slow growth, as well as by his unusual yellowish incrustations overgrowing him, seemed afflicted with jaundice or some other infirmity. Whether this whale belonged to the pod in advance seemed questionable, for it is not customary for such venerable leviathans to be at all social. Nevertheless, he stuck to their way, though indeed their backwater must have retarded him, because the white bone or swell at his broad muzzle was a dashed one. Life is well formed when 2 hostile currents meet. His spout was short, slow, and laborious, coming forth with a choking sort of gush, and spending itself in torn shreds, followed by subterranean commotions in him, which seemed to have regressed at his other very extremity, causing the waters behind him to go up bubble. Who's got some Paragora, said Stubb. He has the stomach ache, I'm afraid, Lord, think of having half an acre of stomach ache. Adverse winds are holding mad Christmas in you boys. It's the first foul wind I ever knew to blow from his stern. But look, did ever whale y'all so before? It must be he's lost his tiller. As an overrated Indian man and bearing down the Hindustani coast, with a deck load of frightened horses, careens, berries, rolls, and wallows on our way. So did the old whale heave his aged bulk, and then partly turning over in his cumbrous rib is exposed the cause of his devious weight in a natural stump that started within. Whether he had lost that in a battle or had been born without, it were hard to say. Only wait a bit, old chap, and I'll give thee a sling for that wounded arm, cried Cool, that flat, pointing out to the whale lying here. Mind you don't swing me with it, cried Starbuck. Give way, the German will have it. With one intent, all the combined rival boats were pointed for this one fish, because not only was he the largest, and therefore the most valuable whale, but he was nearest to them, and the other whales were going with such great velocity, moreover, as almost to defy pursuit at the time. At this juncture, the Pequod's keels had shot by the three German boats last lowered. But from the great start he had, Derek's boats still led the chase, though every moment nearby his foreign rivals. The only thing that feared was that from being already so nigh his mark, he would be unable to dart his iron before they could completely overtake and pass it. As for Derek, he seemed quite confident that this would be the case, and occasionally with a deriding gesture, shook his land feet in the other boats. The audacious and ungrateful dog, cried Starbuck. He mocks and dares me with the very poor box I filled for him not 5 minutes ago. Then in his old intense whisper, give way, greyhounds, don't do it. I tell you what it is, man. I tell you what it is, man, cried Sutherland's crew. It's against my religion to get mad. But I'd like to eat that villainous garment pole. Won't you? Are you going to let that rascal beat me? Do you love brandy? A hog sheet of brandy? Hogs had brandy. Then to the best man. Come, why don't some of you burst a blood vessel? Who's that? Then dropping an anchor overboard. You don't budge an inch with a calm. Hello. Here's grass growing in the boat's bottom. My lord, the mast there is bottom. This won't do, boys. Look at that yarn. The short and longer it is, man. Will he spitfire or not? Oh, see the suds he makes, cried Flash, dancing up and down. What a hum! Oh, do pile on the beef. Lays like a wall. Oh, my lads, do spring slapjacks and quails for supper. You know, my lads, they clams and muffins. Oh, do spring. He's 100 barely. Don't lose him now. Don't. Oh, don't. See that garment? Oh, he won't pull for your duff, my lads. Such a saw. Such a slugger. Don't you love sperm? There goes $3,000 man. A bank, a whole bank, the Bank of England. Oh, do. What's that garment about now? At this moment, Derek was in the act of pitching his land feeder at the advancing boats. And also his oil can, perhaps with a double view of retarding his rival's way, and at the same time economically accelerating his own by the momentary impetus of the backward toss. The unmarried Dutch dogger, cried Stubb. Pull now, men, like 50,000 line of battleship loads of red-haired devils. What do you say, Tashtigo? Are you the man to snap your spine and chew in 20 pieces for the honor of old Gatehead? What do you say? I say, pull like goddamn, cried the Indian. Fiercely but evenly incited by the taunts of the German, the Pequod's 3 boats now began ranging almost abreast, and so disclosed momentarily near him. In that fine, loose, chivalrous attitude, the headsman was drawing near to his prey. The 3 mates stood up proudly, occasionally backing the afterwards with a exhilarating cry of, there she slides now! Hurrah for the white ash breeze! Down with the yarn! Sail over him! But so decided an original start Derek had, that despite all their gallantry, he would have proved the victor in this race, had not a righteous judgment descended upon him in a craft which caught the blade with midship and oar. While this clumsy lubber was striving to free his white ash, and well, in consequence, Derek's boat was nigh to capsizing, and he thundering away his men in a mighty rage. That was a good time for Starbucks up the flats. With a shout, they took a mortal start forwards, and slantingly ranged upon the German's quarter. An instant more, and all four boats were diagonally in the whale's immediate wake, while stretching from them on both sides with the foaming swell that he made. It was a terrific, most pitiable and maddening sight. The whale was now going out, and sending his spout before him in a continual tormented jet, while his one poor fin beat his side in an agony of fright. Now to this hand, now to that. He yawed in his faltering flight, and still at every blow that he rode, he spasmodically sank into the sea, or sideways rolled towards the sky with his unmeaning fin. So have I seen a bird with a clipped wing make affrighted broken circles in the air, vainly striving to escape the piratical hawks. But the bird has a voice, plainly, vainly, and with plaintive cries, will make known her fear. But the fear of this vast, dumb brute of the sea was chained up and enchanted in him. He had no voice save that choking respiration through his spiracle, and this made the sight of him unspeakably pitiable, while still in the amazing bulk, portcullis jaw, and omnipotent tail, there was enough to appall the stoutest man who so pitied. Seeing now that but a very few moments more would give the Pequod's boats the advantage, and rather than thus be foiled by the game, Derek chose to hazard what to him must have seemed the most unusually long dart, ere the last chance would escape forever. But no sooner did his harpooner stand up for the stroke than all three tigers, Queequeg, Tachtigo, and Negu, instinctively sprang to their feet, and standing in a diagonal row, simultaneously punted their barbs, and darted over the head of the German harpooner. Their three Nantucket irons entered the whale. Blinding vapors of foam and white fire. The three boats, in the first fury of the whale's headlong rush, poked the Germans aside with such a force that both Derek and his baffled harpooner spilled out and sailed over by the three flying keels. "Don't be afraid, my butter boxes," cried Stubb, casting a passing glance upon them as he shot by. "You'll be picked up presently. All right. I saw some sharks astern and St. Bernard's dogs. Relieve distressed travelers. Hurrah! This is the way to sail now. Every keel a sunbeam. Hurrah! Here we go, like three tin kettles at the tail of a mad cruiser. This puts me in mind of fastening to an elephant and a tilbury on a plane. Makes the wheel spokes fly, boys, when you fasten to him in that way. And there's danger of being pitched out too, when you strike a hill. Hurrah! This is the way a fellow feels when he's going to Davy Jones. All in a rush down an endless inclined plane. Hurrah! This whale carried the everlasting mail. But the monster's run was a brief one, giving a sudden gasp and tumultuously sounded. With a grating rush, the three lines flew round the loggerheads, with such a force as to gouge deep grooves in them. Well, so fearful were the harpooners that this rapid sound would soon exhaust the lines, that using all their dexterous might, they caught repeated smoking turns with a rope to hold on, till at last, owing to the perpendicular strain from the headline charts of the boats, whence the three ropes went straight down into the water. The gunwales of the bows were almost even with the water, while the three sterns tilted high in the air, and the whale soon ceasing to sound. For some time, they remained in that attitude, fearful of expending more money, though the position was a little tailored. But though boats have been taken down and lost in this way, yet it is this holding on, as it is called, this hooking up by the sharp barbs of his live flesh in the back. This is it. This it is that often torments the Leviathan is. It is soon rising again to meet the sharp legs of his foes. Yet not to speak of the peril of the thing, it is to be doubted whether this course is always the best. For it is but reasonable to presume that the longer the stricken whale stays underwater, the more he is exhausted, because owing to the enormous surface of it, in a full-grown sperm whale, something less than 2,000 square feet, the pressure of the water is immense. We all know what an astonishing atmospheric weight we ourselves stand under, even here above ground in the air. How vast then the burden of a whale bearing on his back a column of 200 fathoms of ocean? They must at least equal the weight of 50 atmospheres. One whale has estimated the weight of 20 line of battle ships, with all their guns and stores and men on board.
As the three boats lay there on that gently rolling sea, gazing down into its eternal blue noon, and as not a single groan or cry of any sort, nay, not so much as a ripple or a bubble, came up from its depths, what landsman would have thought that beneath all the silence and passivity, the utmost monster of the seas was writhing and wrenching in agony? Not 8 inches of perpendicular rope were visible at the bows. Seems it credible that by 3 such thin threads the great Leviathan was suspended like a big weight to an 8-day clock? Suspended? And to what? To 3 bits of board. Is this the creature of whom it was once so triumphantly said, "Canst thou fill his skin with barbed irons, or his head with fish spears? The sword of him that layeth at him cannot hold, the spear, the dart, nor the harp. He esteemeth iron as straw, the arrow cannot make him flee. Darts are counted as stubble. He laugheth at the shaking of a spear." This the creature? This he? Oh, that unfulfillment should follow the prophets. For with the strength of 1,000 eyes in his tail, Leviathan had run his head under the mountains of the sea to hide him from the Pequod's fish spears. And that sloping afternoon sunlight, the shadows that the 3 boats had sent down beneath the surface must have been long enough and broad enough to shade half Xerxes' army. Who can tell how appalling to the wounded whale must have been such huge phantoms flitting over his head? "Stand by, men, he stirs!" cried Starbuck, as the 3 lines suddenly vibrated in the water, distinctly conducting upwards to them, as by magnetic wires, the life and death throbs of the whale, so that every oarsman felt them in his seat. The next moment, relieved in a great part from the downward strain at the bows, the boats gave a sudden bounce upward, as a small ice field will when a dense herd of white bears are scattered from it onto the sea. Haul in, cried Starbuck again. "He's rising." The lines of which hardly an instant before not one hand's breadth could have been gained, were now in long, quick coils flung back, all dripping into the boats, and soon the whale broke water within 2 ships' lengths of the hunters. His motions plainly denoted his extreme exhaustion. In most land animals, there are certain valves or floodgates in many of their veins, whereby, when wounded, the blood is in some degree at least instantly shut off in certain directions. Not so with the whale, one of whose peculiarities it is to have an entire non-valvular structure of the blood vessels, so that when pierced even by so small a point as a harpoon, a deadly drain is at once begun upon his whole arterial system. And when this is heightened by the extraordinary pressure of water at a great distance below the surface, his life may be said to pour from him in incessant streams. Yet so vast is the quantity of blood in him, and so distant and numerous its interior fountains, that he will keep thus bleeding and bleeding for a considerable period, even as a drop of river will flow. whose source is in the wellspring of the far off and indiscernible hills. Even now, when the boats pulled up upon this whale and perilously drew over his swaying flukes, and the lances were darted into him, they were followed by steady jets from the new-made wound, which kept continually playing, while the natural spout hole in his head was only at intervals, however rapid, sending as a frightened moisture into the air. From this last event no blood came yet, because no vital part of him had thus far been struck. His life, as they significantly call it, was untouched. As the boats now more closely surrounded him, the whole upper part of his foam, with much of it that is ordinarily submerged, was plainly revealed. His eyes, or rather the places where his eyes had been, were beheld, as strange, mist-grown masses gather in the knot-holes of the noblest oak when prostrate, so from the points which the whale's eyes had once occupied, now protruded blind bulbs, horribly pitiable to see. But pity there was none. For all his old age, and his one arm, and his blind eyes, he must die that death and be murdered, in order to like the gay bridals and other merry makings of men, and also to illuminate the solemn churches that preach unconditional inoffensiveness by all to all. Still rolling in his blood, at least he partially disclosed a strangely discolored bunch or protuberance, the size of a bushel, low down on the flank. "A nice spot," cried Flask. "Just let me pick 'em there once." "Avast," cried Starbuck. "There's no need of that." But humane Starbuck was too late. At the instant of the dart, an ulcerous jet shot from this cruel wound, and goaded by it into more than sufferable anguish, the whale now spouted thick blood, with swift fury blindly darted at the craft, bespattering them and their glorying crews all over with showers of gore, capsizing Flask's boat, and gnawing the bows. It was his death stroke, for by this time, so spent was he by loss of blood that he helplessly rolled away from the wreck he had made, lay panting on his side, impotently flapping with his stumped fin, then over and over slowly revolved like a waning world, turning up the white secrets of his belly, lay like a log, and died. It was most piteous that last expired spout, as when by unseen hands the water is gradually drawn off from some mighty fountain, and with half-stifled melancholy gurglings, the spray column lowers and lowers to the ground, so that the last long dying spout of the whale. Soon, while the crews were awaiting the arrival of the ship, the body showed symptoms of sinking with all its treasures unrifled. Immediately, by Starbuck's orders, lines were secured to it at different points, so that ere long every boat was buoyed, the sunken whale being suspended a few inches beneath them by the cords. By very heedful management, the ship drew nigh. The whale was transferred to her side, and was strongly secured there by the stiffest fluke chains, for it was plain that unless artificially upheld, the body would at once sink to the bottom. It so chanced that upon the first cutting into him with the spade, the entire length of a corroded harpoon was found embedded in his flesh, on the lower part of the bunch before described. But as the stumps of harpoons are frequently found in the dead bodies of captured whales, with the flesh perfectly healed around them, and no prominence of any kind to denote their place, therefore there must needs have been some other unknown reason in the present case fully to account for the uncertain ulceration alluded to. But still more curious is the fact of the lance head of stone being found in him, not far from the buried iron, the flesh perfectly firm about it. Who had darted that stone lance, and when? It might have been darted by some Northwest Indian long before America was discovered. What other marvels might have been rummaged out of this monstrous cabinet, there is no telling. But a sudden stop was put to further discoveries by the ships being unprecedentedly dragged over sideways to sea, owing to the body's immensely increasing tendency to sink. However, Starbuck, who had the ordering of affairs, hung on to hung onto it to the last, hung to it so resolutely indeed, that when at length the ship would have been capsized, if still persisting in locking arms with the body, then when the command was given to break clear from it, such was the immovable strain upon the timber heads to which the fluke trains and cables were fastened, that it was impossible to cast them off. Meantime, everything in the Pequod was sailing. To cross to the other side of the deck was like walking up the steep gabled roof of a house. The ship groaned and gasped. Many of the ivory inlays of her bulwarks and cabins were startled from their places by the unnatural dislocation. In vain, handspikes and clothes were brought to bear on the immovable fluke chains to pry them adrift from the timber heads, and so low had the whale now settled that the submerged ends could not be at all approached, while every moment whole tons of ponderosity seemed added to the sinking bulk, and the ship seemed on the point of going over. Hold on, Moby, cried Stubb to the body. Don't be in such a devil of a hurry to sink. By thunder, men, we must do something or go for it. No use crying there. Avast, I say, with your handspikes, and run one of ye for a prayer book and a penknife and cut the big chains. A knife, aye, cried Queequeg, and seizing the carpenter's heavy hatchet, he leaned out of a pothole, and steel and iron began lashing at the largest fluke chains. But a few strokes full of sparks were given when the exceeding strain affected the rest. With a terrific snap, every fastening went adrift. The ship righted, the carcass sank. Now this occasional inevitable sinking of the recently killed sperm whale was a very curious thing, nor has any fisherman yet adequately accounted for it. Usually the dead sperm whale floats with great buoyancy, with its side or belly considerably elevated above the surface. If the only whales that thus sink were old, meager, and broken-hearted creatures, their pads of lard diminished, and their bones heavy and rheumatic, then you might with some reason assert that this sinking is caused by an uncommon specific gravity in the fish so sinking, consequent upon his absence of buoyant matter in him. But it is not so. For young whales in the highest health, and swelling with noble aspirations, prematurely cut off in the warm flush of May of life, with all their panting lard about them, even these brawny, buoyant heroes do sometimes sink. Be it said, however, that the sperm whale is far less liable to this accident than any other species. Where one of that sort go down, 20 right whales do. This difference in the species is no doubt imputable to the no small degree of the greater quantity of bone in the right whale. His Venetian blinds alone sometimes weighing more than a ton. From this encumbrance, the sperm whale is wholly free. But there are instances where, after the lapse of many hours or several days, the sunken whale again rises, more buoyant than in life. But the reason of this is obvious. Gases are generated in him. He swells to a prodigious magnitude, becomes a sort of animal balloon. A line of battleship could hardly keep him under them. In the shore whaling, or soundings, among the bays of New Zealand, when a right whale gives token of sinking, they fasten buoys to him, with plenty of room, so that when the body has gone down, they know where to look for it when it shall have ascended again. It was not long after the sinkage of the body that a cry was heard from the Pequod's masthead, announcing that the Jungfrau was again lowering her boats, though the only spout in sight was that of a finback belonging to the species of uncapturable whales, because of its incredible power in swimming. Nevertheless, the finback spout is so similar to the sperm whales that by unskillful fishermen it is often mistaken for it. And consequently, Derrick and all his hosts were now in valiant taste of this unnarrable brute. The Virgin crowning all sail, made after her 4 young keels, and thus they all disappeared far to leeward, still in full hopeful chase. Oh, many are the finbacks, and many are the Derricks, my friend.
Chapter 82, The Honor and Glory of Whaling. There are some enterprises in which careful disorderliness is the true method. The more I dive into this matter of whaling and push my researches up to the very spring head of it, so much the more am I impressed with the great honorableness and antiquity. Especially when I find so many great demigods and heroes, prophets of all sorts, who one way or another have shed distinction upon it. I'm transported with the reflection that I myself belong, though but subordinately, to so emblazoned a fraternity. The gallant Perseus, the son of Jupiter, was the first whaleman, and to the eternal honor of calling it our calling be it said, that the first whale attacked by our brotherhood was not killed with any sordid intent. Those were the mighty days of our profession, when we only bore arms to succor the distressed, and not to fill men's land feeders. Everyone knows the fine story of Perseus and Andromeda, how the lovely Andromeda, the daughter of the king, was tied to a rock on the seacoast, and as Leviathan was in the very act of carrying her off, Perseus, the prince of whalemen, intrepidly advancing, harpooned the monster, and delivered and married the maid. It was an admirable artistic exploit, rarely achieved by the best harpooners of the present day, inasmuch as this Leviathan was slain at the very first dart. And let no man doubt this archaic story. For in ancient Joppa, now Jaffa, on the Syrian coast, in one of the pagan temples, there stood for many ages the vast skeleton of a whale, which the city's legends and all the inhabitants asserted to be the identical bones of the monster that Perseus slew. When the Romans took Joppa, the same skeleton was carried to Italy in triumph. What seems most singular and suggestively important in the story is this. It was from Joppa that Jonah set sail. Akin to the adventure of Perseus and Andromeda, indeed by some supposed to be indirectly derived from it, it's that famous story of St. George and the Dragon, which Dragon I maintain to have been a whale. For in many old chronicles, whales and dragons are strangely joined together, and often stand for each other. Thou art as a lion of the waters, and as a dragon of the sea, saith Ezekiel, hereby plainly meaning a whale. In truth, some versions of the Bible use that word itself. Besides, it would much subtract from the glory of the exploit had St. George been encountered a crawling reptile in the lake instead of doomed battle with the great monster of the deep. Any man may kill a snake, but only a Perseus, a St. George, a coffin, have the heart in them to march boldly up to a whale. Let not the modern paintings of the sea mislead us, for though the creature encountered by that valiant whaleman of old is vaguely represented of a griffin-like shape, and though the battle is depicted on land and the saint on horseback, yet considering the great ignorance of those times when the true form of the whale was unknown to artists, and considering that in Perseus' case, St. George's whale crawled up out of the sea on the beach, and considering that the animal ridden by St. George might have been only a large seal or seahorse, bearing all this in mind, it will not appear altogether incompatible with the sacred legend and the ancient distress scene to hold this so-called dragon no other than the great Leviathan himself. In fact, placed before the strict and piercing truth, this whole story will fare like that fish, flesh and foul idol of the Philistines, Dagon by name, who being planted before the ark of Israel, his horse's head and both the palms of his hands fell off from him, and only the stump or fishy part of him remained. Thus then, one of our own noble stamp, even a whaleman, is the tutelary guardian of England, and by good right, we harpooners of Nantucket should be enrolled in the most noble order of St. George. And therefore let not the knights of that honorable company, none of whom I venture to say have ever had to do with a whale like their great patron, but the never eye a Nantucketer with disdain, but even in our woolen frocks and tarred trousers, we are much better entitled to St. George's decoration than they. Whether to admit Hercules among us or not, concerning this, I long remain dubious. For though according to the Greek mythologies, that ancient Crockett and Kit Carson, that briny doer of rejoicing good deeds, was swallowed down and thrown up by a whale, still, whether that strictly makes a whaleman of him, that might be mooted. It nowhere appears that he ever actually harpooned his fish, unless indeed from the inside. Nevertheless, he may be deemed a sort of involuntary whaleman. At any rate, the whale caught him if he did not the whale. I claim him for one of our clan. But by the best contradictory authorities, this Grecian story of Hercules and the whale is considered to be derived from the still more ancient Hebrew story of Jonah and the whale, and vice versa. Certainly they are very similar. If I claim the demigod, then why not the prophet? Nor do heroes, saints, demigods, prophets alone comprise the whole role of our order. Our grandmaster is still to be named, for like royal kings of old times, we find the headwaters of our fraternity in nothing short of the great gods themselves. That wondrous oriental story is now to be rehearsed from the Shastra, which gives us the dread Vishnu, one of the three persons in the Godhead of the Hindus, gives us this divine Vishnu himself for our Lord, Vishnu, who by the first of his 10 earthly incarnations has forever set apart and sanctified the whale. When Brahm, or the god of gods, say the Shastra, resolved to recreate the world after one of its periodical dissolutions, he gave birth to Vishnu to preside over the work. But the Vedas, or mystical books, whose perusal would seem to have been indispensable to Vishnu before beginning the creation, and which therefore must have contained something in the shape of practical hints to young architects, these Vedas were lying at the bottom of the water. So Vishnu became incarnate in a whale, and sounding down him to the uttermost depth, rescued the sacred volumes. Was not this Vishnu a whaleman then? Even as a man who rides a horse is called a horseman? Perseus, St. George, Hercules, Jonah, and Vishnu. There's a number roll for you. What club but the whalemen can head off like that? Chapter 83. Jonah historically regarded. Reference was made to the historical story of Jonah and the whale in the preceding chapter. Now, some interpreters rather distrust this historical story of Jonah and the whale. But then there were some skeptical Greeks and Romans who, standing out from the Orthodox pagans of their time, equally doubted the story of Hercules and the whale, and Arion and the dolphin. Yet their doubting those traditions did not make those traditions one whit the less fact, for all fact. One old Stag Harbor William's chief reason for questioning the Hebrew story was this. He had one of those quaint old-fashioned Bibles, embellished with curious, unscientific plates, one of which represented Jonah's whale with two spouts in his head, a peculiarity only true with respect to a species of the Leviathan, the right whale, and varieties of that order, concerning which the fishermen have this saying, a penny roll would choke him. His swallow was so very small. But to this Bishop Judd's anticipative answer is ready. It is not necessary, hints the bishop, that we consider Jonah as tuned in the whale's belly, but is temporarily lodged in some part of his mouth. And this seems reasonable enough in the bishop, for truly the right whale's mouth would accommodate a couple of whist tables, comfortably seat all the players. Possibly, too, Jonah might have ensconced himself in a hollow tooth, but on second thoughts, the right whale is toothless. Another reason why the Sag Harbor, he went by that name, urged for this his want of faith in this matter of the prophet was something obscurely in reference to his incarcerated body and the whale's gastric juices. But this objection likewise falls to the ground because a German exegetist supposed that Jonah must have taken refuge in the floating body of the dead whale, even as the French soldiers in the Russian campaign turned their dead horses into tents and crawled into them. Besides, it's been defined by other continental commentators that when Jonah was thrown overboard from the Jaffa ship, he straightway effected his escape to another vessel nearby, some vessel with a whale for a figurehead. And I would add, possibly called the whale, as some craft are nowadays christened the shark, the gull, the eagle. Nor have there been wanting learned exegetists who have opined that the whale mentioned in the book of Jonah merely meant a life preserver, an inflated bag of wind, which the endangered prophet swam to and so was saved from a watery doom. Poor Sag Harbor, therefore, seems worse all around, but he had still another reason for his want of faith. It was this, if I remember right. Jonah was swallowed by the whale in the Mediterranean Sea, and after 3 days, he was vomited up somewhere in the 3 days' journey of Nineveh, a city on the Tigris, very much more than 3 days' journey across from the nearest point of the Mediterranean coast. How was that? But was there no other way for the whale to land the prophet within that short distance of Nineveh? by way of Cape of Good Hope. But not just because the passage through the whole lake of the Mediterranean and another passage up the Persian Gulf and the Red Sea. Such a supposition would involve the complete circumnavigation of all Africa in 3 days, not to speak of the Tigris' waters, near the site of Nineveh being too shallow for any whale to swim in. Besides, this idea of Jonah weathering the Cape of Good Hope at so early a day would rest in honor of the discovery of that great headland from Bartholomew Diaz, its reputed discoverer, and so make modern history a liar. But all these foolish arguments of old Sag Harbor only evinced his foolish pride of reason, of being still more reprehensible in him, seeing that he had but little learning except what he had picked up from the sun and sea. I say, it only shows his foolish, envious pride, and the abominable, devilish rebellion against the reverend clergy. For by a Portuguese Catholic priest, this very idea of Jonah's going to Nineveh via the Cape of Good Hope was advanced as a signal magnification of the general miracle. And so it was. Besides, to this day, the highly enlightened Turks devoutly believe in the historical story of Jonah. And some 3 centuries ago, an English traveler in old Harris's voyages speaks of the Turkish mosque built in honor of Jonah. English mosque was a miraculous lamp that burnt without any oil.
Chapter 84, Pitch Bowling. To make them run easily and swiftly, the axles of carriages are anointed, and for much the same purpose. Some whalers perform an analogous operation upon their boat. They grease the bottom. Nor is it to be doubted that such a procedure can do no harm. It may possibly be of no contemptible advantage, considering that oil and water are hostile, that oil is a sliding thing, and that the object in view is to make the boat slide bravely. Queequeg believes strongly in anointing his boat, and one morning, not long after the German ship Jungfrau disappeared, it took more than the customary pains in that occupation, crawling under its bottom, where it hung over the side, and rubbing the unconsciousness as though diligently seeking to ensure a crop of hair from the craft's bald peel. He seemed to be working in obedience to some particular presentiment, nor did it remain unwarranted by the event. Towards noon, whales were raised, but so soon as the ship sailed down to them, they turned and fled with swift precipitancy, a disordered flight, as that of Cleopatra's barges from Actium. Nevertheless, the boats pursued, and Stubbs was foremost. By great exertion, Tashigo had at last succeeded in planting one iron, but the stricken whale, without at all sounding, still continued his horizontal flight, with added fleetness. Such unintermitted strains upon the planted iron must sooner or later invariably extract it. It became imperative to lance the flying whale, or be content to lose him. But to haul the boat up to his flank was impossible. He swam so fast and furious. What then remained? Of all the wondrous devices and dexterities, the sleights of hand and countless subtleties to which the Veterian whaleman is so often forced, none exceeding that fine maneuver with the lance called pitch bowling. Small sword or broadsword, and all its exercises boast nothing like it. It is indispensable only with an inevitable running whale. Its grand fact and feature is what wonderful distance to which the long lance is accurately darted from the violently rocking, jerking boat under extreme headway. Steel and wood included, the entire spear is some 10 or 12 feet in length. The staff is much slighter than that of the harpoon, but also of a lighter material, pine. It is furnished with a small rope called a warp of considerable length, by which it may be hauled back to the hand after darting. But before going further, it is important to mention here that though the harpoon may be pitch-poled in the same way with the lance, yet it is seldom done, and when done, is still less frequently successful on account of the greater weight and inferior length of the harpoon as compared with the lance, which in effect become serious drawbacks. As a general thing, therefore, you must first go get fast to a whale before pitch bowling comes into play. Look now at A man who from his humorous, deliberate coolness and equanimity in the direst emergencies was specially qualified to excel in pitch pulling. Look at him. He stands upright in the tossed bow of a flying boat, wrapped in fleecy foam. The towing whale is 40 feet ahead, handling the long lance lightly, glancing twice or thrice along its length to see it if it be exactly straight. Stubb whistlingly gathers up the coil in one hand so as to secure its free end in his grasp, leaving the rest unobstructed. Then, holding the lance full before his waistband's middle, he levels it at the whale. When covering him with it, he steadily depresses the butt end in his hand, hereby elevating the point till the weapon stands fairly balanced upon his palm, 15 feet in the air. He reminds you somewhat of a juggler balancing a long staff on his chin. Next moment, with a rapid and nameless impulse and a superb, lofty arch, the bright steel spans the foaming distance and quivers in the light spot of the whale. Instead of sparkling water, he now spouts red blood. That drove the spigot out of him, cried Stubb. 'Tis July the mortal 4th. All fountains must run wine today. Would now it were New Orleans whiskey, or old Ohio, or unspeakable old Magnolia. Then, Tashigo, lad, I'd have ye hold a captain to the deck, and we drink round it. Yea, verily, hearts alive, we brew choice punch in the spread of this spout hole there, and from that live punch bowl quaff the living stuff. Again and again, to such great gamesome talk, the dexterous dart is placed, the spear returning to its master like the greyhound held in a skillful leash. The agonized whale goes to his flurry. The tow line is slackened, and the pitch puller, dropping astern, folds his hands and mutely watches the monster die.
Chapter 55, the Dark. That for 6,000 years, and no one knows how many millions of ages more, the great whales should have been scattered all over sea, and spring honey is defined by the deep, as a similarly sprinkling or is defined with its tops. And that for some centuries back, thousands of countries should have been close by a copy of the whale, watching these sparkling in the sky. That all this should be, and yet, that down to this blessed minute, 15 minutes past the o'clock p.m. of this 16th day of December, 1850. It should still remain a problem whether these spoutings are, after all, really water, or nothing but vapor. This surely is no worthy thing. Let's then look at this matter, along with some interesting items. Everyone knows that by the peculiar coming of their gills, the fighting tribes in general breathe the air which at all times is combined with the element in which they swim. Hence, a heron or a cod might live a century and never once raise its head above the surface. But owing to this marked internal structure which gives him regular lungs, like human beings, the whale can only live by inhaling the disengaged air in the atmosphere. Wherefore the necessary periodical visits to the upper world. But he cannot in any degree breathe through his mouth, for in his ordinary attitude, the sperm whale's mouth is buried at least 8 feet from the surface. And what is still more, his windpipe has no connection with his mouth. Now, he breathes through the spherical lung, and this on top of his head. If I say that any creature breathing is only a function dispensable to vitality, as much as it withdraws from the air a certain element, which being subsequently brought into contact with the blood and parts to the blood, it's a vivifying principle. I do not think I shall err, though I may possibly use some superfluous scientific words. Assume it and follow it that if all the blood in man could be aerated with one breath, he might then seal his nostrils and not mention them for a considerable time. That is to say, he would then live without living. On the malice, as it may seem, this is precisely the case with
who systematically lives by impulse this full hour or android, without drawing a single breath, or so as much as any way inhaling a particle of air. For, remember, he has no gills. How is this? Between his ribs on each side of his spine, he is supplied with the remarkable involved creative labyrinth of the Christian myth. First, that burrowy silly, like vessels. Which vessels, when he quits the surface, are completely distended with oxygen in your blood. So that for an hour or more, 1,000 fathoms of the sea, he carries a surface of vitality. Just as the camel crossing the waterless desert carries a surplus supply of drink for the future or supplementary stomachs. The anatomical fact of this labyrinth is indisputable, and the supposition found it is reasonable and true. Seems more cogent to me. When I consider the otherwise inexplicable obstinacy of that environment, and how did this start else? As a fisherman prison. This is what I mean. If unmolested upon rising to the surface, the sperm will continue there for a period of time, exactly as one with all its other unmolested risings. Say he stays on appearance, and ejects hundreds of times, that is, respires 7 breaths. Then, whenever he rises again, he'll be sure to have his 7 breaths over again, to a minute. Now, if he touches a few breaths, you alarm. Now, after he touches a few breaths, you alarm him, so that he sounds, he will be always started up again to make good regular amounts of air. And not until those 70 breaths are told will he finally go down and stay out until he turns below. Remark, however, that in different individuals these rates are different, but in any one they are alike. Now, why should the whale thus insist upon having its scales out, unless it's to replenish its reservoir of air? Air is simply for good. How obvious is it, too, that this necessity for the whale's rising exposes him to the fatal hazards of the chase? For not by hook or by net could this vast alive be caught. When sailing 1,000 fathoms through the sunlight, not so much by skill then, O hunter, as the great necessity that striking victory to be. And man, breathing is incessantly going on. One breath only serving for 2 or 3 pulsations. So that whatever the business he has to attend to, waiting or sleeping, breathing must go down to will. But the sperm whale only breathes about 1/17 or Sunday at a time. It has been said that the whale only breathes through the spout. If it could truthfully be evident that his spouts are mixed with water, then I would find he should be furnished with the reason why his sense of smell is obliterated. For the only thing about him is that all answers to his doubts, the evidence is that identical spout and being so called with 2 elements, it could not be expected to have the power to know. But owing to the mystery of the spout, whether it be water or whether it be vapor, no absolute certainty can yet be arrived at on this head. Surely it's nevertheless that his firm has no proper olfactory. But what does he want from them? Neither roses, nor violets, nor cold water in the sea. Furthermore, he had slowly opens into the temple started from there. And as that long canal, like the grand view, is furnished with a sort of box that has been checked. For the downward tensions of the air or the upward distribution of fire, there is, of course, will has been voiced. On to insult to by stating that when he so strange resembles the detox of his nose. But then again, what has the woman said? So I have known any profound being that has anything to say. And that's forced to stammer out something by way of getting a living. Oh, happy that the world is such an excellent listener. Now, the spouting canal is fertile, chiefly intended as it is for the conveyance of air, and for several feet later on, horizontally, just as the outer surface said. And a little down to 0.5. This curious canal is very much like a gas pipe laid down in a city on one side of the street. But the question returns whether this gas pipe is also a water pipe. In other words, whether the spout is thermal is the mere vapor of the exhaled air, or whether that exhaled air, breath, is mixed with water to get it in the mouth and discharged through the spiral. It is certain that the mouth directly communicates with the spouting now, but it cannot be proven that this is for the purpose of discharging the water through the spiral. Because the greatest necessity for doing so would seem to be when feeding the accidental takes water, but the sperm whale's food is far from the surface, and there they cannot spout if you would. Besides, if you regard them very closely and time them to watch, you will find that when unmolested, there is an undeviating line between the periods of its jets and the ordinary periods of the respiration. But why pester one with all this reasoning on the subject? Speak out. You have seen him spout, then declare what the spout is. Can you not tell water from air? My dear sir, in this world it is not so easy to settle these plain things. I found your plain things in the night at all. And as for this whale spout, you might understand it, and yet be undecided as to what it is precisely. The central body of it is hidden in a snowy sparkling mist enveloping it. And how can you certainly tell whether any water comes from it when you are close enough to the whale to get a close view of its spout? He is a pervious collision. The water is cascading all around there. And if at such times you should think that you really receive drops of moisture in the spout, how do you know that they're not really condensed from the vapor? Or how do you know that they're not those identical drops which are lodged in the spout moisture? Which is the counter subject to this one that we just said. For even when tranquility is swimming through a midday state of the calm, with its elevated sun drive as a strawberries in the desert, even then, the whale always carries a small mixture of water on its head, as under a blazing sun, the sun finds the cavity and a rock will come with rain. Nor is it at all prudent of the hunter to be over curious touching the precise nature of the whale's spout. It will not do for him to peer into it and put his face in it. You cannot go with your picture to the spout and fill it and give it away. For even when coming into slight contact with the outer vaporous shreds of the jet, which will often happen, your skin will feverishly smart from the activeness of the thing so touching. And I know when coming into still closer contact with the spout, or with some scientific object in view, or otherwise, I cannot say. The skin peeled off from his cheek and arm, wherefore, among women, the spout is deemed poisonous. They try to evade it. Another thing, I have heard it said, and I do not much doubt it, that if the jet is fairly spouted into your eyes, it will burn blinding. The wisest thing the investigator can do then, as they say, is to let this deadly spout alone. Still, we can hypothesize. Even if we cannot prove and establish, my hypothesis is this, that the spout is nothing but mist. And besides other reasons, to this conclusion I am compelled by considerations touching the great inherent dignity and sublimity of this program. I count that there was common with shadow reading, inasmuch as it is an undisputed fact that he is never found on his island or near shores. All the other whales of that time. He is both ponderous and profound. And I am convinced that from the heads of all wonders for beings, such as Plato, Hydro, the Devil, Jupiter, Dante, and so on, there are always going a certain seeming slight invisible skin, while in the act of thinking be thoughts. While composing a little treatise on eternity, I have the curiosity that there's a miracle. an ear-long soul reflected there, a curious involved warming, and undulation in the atmosphere overhead. The invariable moisture of my hair, while punished in the thought, after 6 cups of hot tea in my bedding chamber of the August after. This seemed an additional argument for the above sensation. And how nobly it rises our conceit of the mighty mysterious monster, to behold him solemnly sailing through a calm tranquil sea. His vast mild head overhung by a canopy of vapor, engendered by his infinite contemplations. In that vapor, as he thought Wilmar sometimes did, and he was sometimes did, glorified by a rainbow, as heaven itself has put a seal upon our thoughts. For, do you see, rainbows do not exist in the air. They all make your ear ringing vapor. And so, through all the thick mists of the dim dark of the night, divine intuitions now and then rekindling my fulfilling my call and my way. And for this, I thank God. For all have doubts, many deny, but doubts which matter, few along with them have intuition. Doubts of all things earthly, and intuitions of some things heavenly. This combination makes neither a believer nor a fulfilled, but it makes a man who regards them most both with the evil eye.
The tail. Other poets have warned of the praises of the soft-eyed the antelope and the love of plumage and bird that never lights. Less celestial, I celebrate the top. Reckoning the largest size sperm whale's tail to begin at the point of the trunk, where it tapers to about the birth of a man. It comprises, upon its upper surface alone, an area of at least 50 square feet. The compact round body of its root expands into 2 broad, firm, flat palms, or flukes, gradually shoaling away to less than an inch in thickness. At the crotch or junction, these flukes slightly overlap, then sideways recede from each other like wings, leaving a wide vacancy between. In no living thing are the lines of beauty more exquisitely defined than in the presenting borders of these flukes. At its utmost expansion at the full-grown whale, the tail will considerably exceed 20 feet across. The entire member seems a dense webbed bed of welded sinews, but cut into it, and you will find that 3 distinct strata compose it: upper, middle, and lower. The fibers in the upper and lower layers are long and horizontal. Those of the middle one very short and running crosswise between the outside layers. This triune structure, as much as anything else, imparts power to the tail. To the student of old Roman walls, the middle layer will furnish a curious parallel to the thin course of tiles always alternating with the stone in those wonderful relics of the antique, and which undoubtedly contribute to much of the great strength of masonry. But this vast local power in the tendinous tail were not enough. The whole bulk of the Leviathan is knit over with a warp and a woof of muscular